Hey there, scary people, and welcome back to the One Scary Woman YouTube channel. So today we are going to talk about revising those screenplays. Now, last week I touched briefly on the scariest things about reaching out to people and getting feedback. We're going to talk about that a bit more in next week's episode. But for this week, I really want you to think about just the process you need to go through to revise your screenplay, which you absolutely should do at least one pass prior to sharing it with anyone else. Because the minute you get done writing, you might feel in your heart this is the best thing in the world, the best thing anyone could have ever written. But chances are, if you go through and if you know what to look for, you're going to find a couple things that you want to elevate before you go ahead and put it out there and start getting feedback from other people. So let's talk a little bit about this revision process. Now, the way you don't want to do it is the way that probably 99% of writers do it, which is you just sit down and you read it start to finish. And as you go through reading it start to finish, you're trying to tweak little different things. This is not the way I want you to approach any of your revisions. And I know that logically it sounds like a good idea, but it's not. And I'll tell you why. Because when you sit down and you read the script start to finish, you get sucked into the story and you forget to actually look for the different things that you should be looking for to make sure that that script is the best thing that it could be. So there are two main things that I want you to keep in mind, two things that are going to really, really help you with this process. So number one, your best friend when it comes to revising is your outline. So yes, go ahead, give the script a read through, but you're not going to start revising. You're not going to be focused on all the little wordsmithing details when you do that. Instead, just focus on, do you have a feeling that in one area or another, something's missing or something drags a little bit? If you realize that something needs to be added in, you don't want to be in the weeds inside a 100-page screenplay trying to figure out how and where to do it. Instead, you want to look at that wonderful outline, your best friend, and revise from the outline if you know something needs to go somewhere. Because when you're working with the outline, it's very easy to make a decision just to include something that's not yet included, just plug it in, or to move stuff around. And you can experiment with that with the outline before making the final decision and then going into that 100-page script and moving it around there. So keep that in mind. Now, the next main tip that I'm going to give you is that you should actually be doing revisions in several different passes, breaking things down and just looking for one thing at a time. Again, this is going to make it much more manageable for you as a writer. If people just read, they get into the 100-page screenplay, you're in the weeds there. It can be very hard to pull back and see exactly what you have to fix. But if you divide it up and you're just looking for one specific thing at a time as you do each read through, it gets a lot easier. So I recommend doing a basic pass. First and foremost, how are things working? So like we just talked about, is it flowing well, or does it feel like anything's missing or anything needs to be added? So do a basic pass for that. You can edit from your outline as you do that. Do a pass looking specifically at dialogue. So don't get caught reading all the description, all the everything. I actually recommend you take one character at a time and just read their dialogue and check it for things like, does it sound like it's in their authentic voice? And is there exposition? If you notice that they have a lot of extra exposition, you're going to want to rework that dialogue so that you use a little bit more subtext and the dialogue becomes more interesting. So again, do one character at a time. Don't get caught up in the scene reading the back and forth between characters, because that sucks you into the story and it's going to make you miss it if there is something that needs to or can be improved upon and elevated. Do one pass just looking at your description. So is your description as powerful as it could be? And is there anything that you could cut from it? So remember, screenplays are very economical. They're meant to move very quickly when people read them. You want them to be a fast read. Are you getting bogged down in massive amounts of description? If so, do one pass just to edit down that description and try not to have any descriptive paragraphs that run over 3 lines. I also recommend doing a pass for the theme, the essence. So we talked a lot about the essence. What is the overall essence of your story? Because that is more important than any individual details. So once you hone in on exactly what is the essence you want to portray, do a read through specifically looking for, does every scene, every line deliver on this essence? If it doesn't, you want to highlight it, you want to come back to it, either improve it so that it does, or you might want to cut it all together. All right, so just to recap, Make any large edits starting with your outline first. This will save you a lot of frustration. It's a lot easier than trying to wade through a 100-page screenplay and decide where to put things. Instead, look at the outline and make those big decisions there. Then for any other smaller things that you're working on in your revision, do an individual pass for each one, as opposed to trying to do them all at once or trying to do a read through where you're making changes on multiple things at once. So just look at, for example, one character's lines just one time, going through looking only at their lines, making sure it aligns with the character. Do a pass only looking for essence and theme. Do a pass only looking at your description. By separating these things out, you can really focus on them and make each one as good as it can possibly be, again, instead of getting lost in the weeds. When all of that is done, by all means, do a basic wordsmithing pass where you read through. You can decide to pretty up your words, and of course, look for your formatting. Absolutely do a pass making sure that your formatting is correct. And by the time you do all this and you have it separated out, you've given each one of these things the individual attention and focus it deserves, you're going to have an amazing script. All right, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you back here next week to talk about getting feedback from other people when you're in your revision process.